Hey guys, so I have a theory about consciousness, and I want to know what you think. Um, so the theory that I want to mention here is that consciousness exists only to solve a problem, to make to make something that is wrong right, and then once it has done that, consciousness goes away. So, so the brain the brain, the thing that is capable of consciousness. It is unconscious, okay? And then if it has access to something that it determines to be wrong or in need of fixing, whatever fixing means and whatever wrong means, it will generate consciousness to deal with this problem. And consciousness is aimed at that problem. And then once consciousness fixes it completely, based on the judgment of this thing that is capable of consciousness, which is the brain, the consciousness will then go back down where it came from. It will kind of go away, and then there's no consciousness anymore. So this is a theory I've had in the back of my head for quite a while. And then when I experienced something recently, that it capped the stone on the theory, which is that I noticed that whenever I'm doing things wrong, I become more aware, more here in this living thing, in this whole life thing. And then when I'm doing things right, the more I do things right, and I mean really, deeply right, I become less conscious. I feel I'm being kind of pulled out of life. And then I experience this passive, smooth awareness thing. It's very non-interactive. It's very like I'm watching my body or my nervous system interact with the world. And so when I've established the behavioral patterns that are appropriate and that are good to respond to the world's demands. And in that case, I don't have to think about my actions. I don't have to think about my behavior. Because my behavior, my body knows how to react, knows how to respond in certain situations. And in those cases where everything I'm doing in the span of time that I'm living right now, a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, maybe, in those cases where everything that's happening, my body knows what to do, that I don't have to think about it, um, but I'm still active. Like it's not when I'm just laying in bed. No, when I'm actually active, uh, I don't have to think about things. I feel less conscious. Maybe consciousness is the wrong word because the language that we use to try to talk about this particular topic, it's not very well formed. It's like this the same abstract objects that we talk about from time period to time period, from culture to culture, the language varies. And so maybe right now we talk about consciousness, maybe the same thing that we're talking about, maybe the same thing that we mean in the past, they use the word God, or they use the word Jesus, or they use the spirit, soul, whatever. So it's not exactly clear what word I should be using here. But I think consciousness makes most sense to me. Um, so it's kind of like the purpose of consciousness is to solve a problem, and then once that problem is solved, the consciousness goes back down to nothing. Uh, this is not a reflection of the objective scenario. So if the situation, so this level of consciousness that goes up and down, depending on the situation, or not the situation, but depending on whether my nervous system or myself or my body knows how to respond to the situation. So you can think of it this way. Uh, Consciousness is meant to look at the nervous system and look at the situation and orient the nervous system to match the demands of the situation. And then once the nervous system is properly oriented towards, to meeting the demands of the situation and the environment, the consciousness can go away. And then when another situation comes where the nervous system doesn't know how to properly respond, consciousness is then generated to match the nervous system to the demands of the environment. And then once that matching has been established, the consciousness can just go away. See, this kind of makes, if this theory was true, then it would make sense. Then the whole story of Adam and Eve being born in heaven and then being brought down to earth it kind of makes sense, because think of it this way. So before, there was no consciousness. The human beings, Adam and Eve, were born in heaven in this divine perfection, and they weren't self-conscious, right? They weren't self-conscious, but they were in perfect harmony. They were experiencing perfect divine existence, right? And then slowly, not suddenly, but kind of gradually, they were degenerated down into an earthly existence, into an earthly lowly existence. And then we're told in this earthly lowly existence that if you behave properly, if you do things right in your lifetime, you will then die and go back to heaven, basically. It's kind of like this. It kind of matches my theory in that in the beginning, there's no consciousness. And then there's a problem or something imperfect, right? And then consciousness is generated, which is your life in this earth, in this slowly earthly existence that we inhabit today. And then if we do things right, in other words, if we solve the problem, in other words, if we properly orient our nervous system to match the demands of the environment, if we do that well enough, our consciousness will dial down and go back to the paradise it came from, which is the lack of consciousness, which is the experience of everything going right, and that's heaven. If everything is going right, that means our brains, does not detect any hints of anything going imperfectly. And that's paradise. When literally everything that is physically accessible by your brain, and that your brain has the capability of processing, is going perfectly. Perfectly. That's paradise. And then with the whole story of Adam and Eve being like starting in heaven and then being brought to earth where there's problems and evil and malevolence and tragedy and suffering and pain and anxieties and stress and all the bad things, they're brought back down, and then if they do the right things, they'll be brought back up. I hope this theory is making sense here. Yeah, I hope this theory is making sense. And you can think of it this way. So, consciousness is not a Boolean, so it's not you're either conscious or you're not. That's not the point, or that's not the case. It's more like, how conscious are you? And if you're in your spiritual journey, the question of how conscious are you, if the answer is a lot, that's a good thing. But in the context of this theory, if the answer is a lot, that's a bad thing. See, again, it's all problem with language. Maybe what I'm talking about here isn't even consciousness. I can't tell. It's not clear. It's really not clear. But anyway, so if, in terms of like your spiritual development and your spiritual journey, what you do in meditation is that you you try to like raise your consciousness, but you can put that in other words, and I think those other words are more accurate, which is that you're raising your awareness, not your consciousness, your awareness. Your awareness of things, your awareness of events and the things that are happening and of your own existence and blah 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 blah. It's working on your awareness, not your consciousness. I don't think it's consciousness. I think it's more accurate to say that you're working on your awareness, and like your awareness of your response to things in the environment, that is. So I think that that's a more accurate way of putting it. But I think that I also think potentially the reason that when we're having so much fun and when things are going right, time flies by. Like the whole phenomenon of the flow. Let me quickly see if I can find it on a 2-second Google search. So the flow phenomenon, maybe. I don't have access to the internet. Damn it, I have to connect to my Wi-Fi, to my phone hotspot, but I'm not gonna do that now. Anyway, you guys have come across this psychological thing where when you're in an extremely deep level of focus, you're not aware of time, and you're just in the flow, in the moment, in the zone. I think that that's happening because you've managed somehow to align all of you towards this one single problem. And so in the moment, everything is going perfectly right. Your entire nervous system is working as a single, fully integrated unit, uh, aimed at one single thing in the environment. And when that full integration is happening, you're not conscious. You're not experiencing the flow of time. You're not feeling bad or good. You're just, you know, floating above good and bad. Good and bad, yeah. And I think that that's. I don't want to say this. I just hesitated to say it in the moment. I was gonna say. I think that that's paradise, but I don't. I shouldn't have just said that just now. I don't think that that's true. I don't know. I don't know. I meant what I meant is that the same experience of everything going perfectly right. So everything that your brain has access to again is going perfectly right. That's paradise. And I think I don't know about other religions, but in Islam we're told that there's levels of paradise. I think there's like 10 levels, which is yeah. I think there's like 10 levels. I don't know. But the idea is that paradise isn't a thing, and you're either in or you're out. It's more like there's levels of paradise. You can be in hell or on earth, which are both outside paradise, but paradise itself there's levels of it. So it's possible that how conscious you are is low, like that's bad, because because you're experiencing problems. You're experiencing things going wrong, and they need to be fixed now. And that's why you're conscious, because your conscious is demanded. It's needed to solve the problems. That's the whole point of consciousness. If your consciousness was not needed, I mean, think about this. So we humans, I mean, coming from a Darwinian perspective, uh, just think about this correlation, okay? And I've had this correlation in my mind for a long time. Um, Now think of the efficiency of how we humans evolve versus the efficiency of how pretty much every other living thing on Earth evolves. They evolve at an extremely slow rate, right? Now think of it this way also. In the span of an individual specimen's life, what kind, like how much growth and evolution happens? It's one step max, because what the way that that little specimen lives its life uh, doesn't change anything regarding the species, right? So if that organism managed to survive and procreate, they've incremented one step in their evolution, right? One DNA step, one genetic step. Maybe that step will go away if that branch gets cut off. Um, so the maximum is one tiny, tiny, tiny step, right? Now think of it this way: the same amount of time. How much evolution for the species does a human being's life take, or do, or bring? So a single human being's life makes uh, such a single human being makes a ton of decisions and choices and puts on a lot of effort and work, and they contribute to science, they contribute to culture, they contribute to art and music and history, they contribute in the collective brain power and processing power of the collective human species in their lifetime, right? Like even if you spend the worst possible, most useless, pathetic life, you still contributed a giant, giant leap of evolution in your lifetime, right? So if you compare how much evolution and development happens between a single non-human organism to a single human organism, the comparison is it's huge. It's a huge, huge difference. At the same time, if you compare how conscious we are, of course, we can't really compare their consciousness, but I think it's safe to say, again, this is a very, very weak theory, but just, think of it as philosophy, okay? Not science. If you compare how conscious a human being is, which is like an extremely heightened sense of awareness and presence, and we experience each moment like we are very ridiculously aware of our feelings, of the twitches in every muscle in our body, right? We experience all of that. Of course, usually in a given moment in time, we're only focused on one thing at a time, but we have all that awareness accessible to us all the time in our entire lives, except if we're asleep, right? So, um, like that heightened level of awareness, that 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 massive difference in consciousness is there because I mean it's there. At the same time, we are much more effective at fixing our lives and fixing things and getting better at establishing our species, basically, right? And I think that those two are correlated. So, how conscious we are, I mean, we are very highly conscious because we do a lot to solve to make things better, to fix things, right? When there's nothing that needs to be fixed, we are less conscious. Our consciousness kind of dials down. That's just my theory. I've said this like I've reiterated the theory like 3 times in the video, but yeah, that's just a theory. And I think yeah, I just like how it's kind of matches the story of Adam and Eve. I mean, the story arch, the story arc, the big picture of 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 the story. Um, and that let's say, for example, that you encounter a problem, your brain, which is the matter that is capable of consciousness, generates the consciousness that you are, and then you solve the problem, and then your consciousness goes down. When your consciousness goes down, that's you dying. That's you dying, and that doesn't feel that good. I mean, look, I'm not gonna claim that it doesn't feel that good. I know I just said that, but I take it back. But I remember in my life, one thing that held me back is that when I did things right, it felt unengaging. It felt kind of mundane and boring. It felt not boring. That's the wrong word. It felt understimulating. I felt stimulated when I had problems to think about, problems to occupy myself with, but I didn't experience it as boredom. That's a different thing. I didn't experience it as understimulating. I didn't experience it as anything I knew how to how to describe and express. It felt different. It felt like when I did things right, like I'm not there to enjoy the rewards, something like that. Like I wasn't alive. I wasn't there. I wasn't in this life thing. I felt like my consciousness, imagining that it's here in my head, in my brain area. Let's say. So I kind of felt like it was taken out of my body and not in this three-dimensional space. I felt it was kind of grabbed out of me into a higher dimension where there is no life thing. So this life exists in four dimensions. It was taken out of those four dimensions into another space where this doesn't exist. It felt something like that, like I wasn't here, and that really stopped me and held me back from getting my life together and doing things right, and not being anxious, not being stressed. It really held me back. I was too attached to this life thing. Um, and so yeah, yeah. I That's all I really wanted to say there. That's my theory. So, as a corollary to this theory, if that makes any sense, I don't exactly know. But anyway, as a corollary to the theory, that consciousness is there to kill itself. Consciousness, the purpose of consciousness is to go back to being unconscious. Not unconscious in the lacking mindfulness sense. Unconscious meaning the way you were before you were born, which is nothing. So, lack of consciousness, not lack of awareness. That's a different story entirely. Lack of consciousness, which is that you're not even here experiencing anything. So the purpose of consciousness is to not be conscious. The purpose of consciousness is to kill itself, is to end its own existence. It's the one thing that must acknowledge that it's not being there is a good thing. And this is not suicide. Please don't take it that way. That's not what I mean. Not even close. Not even kind of close. Very, very, very far away. The complete opposite direction. And that paradise, heaven, it's the ultimate state of unconsciousness. Using the terminology in this video only, um, and that hell is the ultimate experience of consciousness, because your consciousness, your brain, is bombarded and overwhelmed with suffering and everything going wrong all the time. That's the definition of hell. And that the other side, the definition of paradise, is that everything is going perfectly right, and you need to do nothing to make it any better because it can't get any better. That's the ultimate paradise. That's a theory. And this kind of goes well together with the idea that when things are going wrong, you experience a heightened state of awareness. Like you experience the flow of time much more intensely. And so 1 second can feel like an eternity. That's an exaggeration. 1 second can feel like 2 days. It feels really intense. That's when things are going really, really wrong. Because in those moments, your brain needs the most conscious awareness. So pay attention to everything that the brain has access to, and see how to make them all better and fix the problems. And so the brain needs most conscious awareness, most most conscious intervention. And so it generates most consciousness. That's my theory, and I actually like it. I can see how it can be false. I can see how it can be untrue. But that's like I think that's how theories start. They start off wrong, and then they taken out of the person who created the theory or came up with the theory, and then they just get bombarded from all directions with things that tell it it's wrong, that this is false, this is wrong, because of this you're incorrect. I just get bombarded, and everything that's false about the theory gets kind of sliced out, and what remains is things that are correct. But it also gets integrated into everything else that has been established to be correct and true. And if nothing remains, then it's a wrong theory. Period. So I guess this theory will be criticized by you viewers of mine. So yeah. Yeah. So I guess you can think of the the practice of mindfulness meditation is strengthening your muscle, like your your consciousness muscle, being able to be more conscious when there's demand, and that allows you to fix more problems more effectively, and then you feel better by having your consciousness reduced. Um, yeah. All right. I like making videos. That's why it's a 26-minute long video. And I hope you guys like watching these long videos, these long form videos. Yeah. All right. So I gotta start my going to bed routine, which includes a meal and Netflix and iPad games. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you watched to the end, thank you for that. If not, if you watched to the end, please let me know once again. Yes, I would just like to to see how many guys, how many people watched to the end of the video. That's always nice to know, and I don't think there's a lot of I don't think there's a lot of my viewers who okay, I don't think there's a lot of my subscribers who watch my videos, and those who watch, there's a tiny fraction who watched to the end of the video. If you are one of them and you want more of these videos, please let me know. I do need to know that people are watching them, because if nobody's watching my videos, I don't have interest. I'm not interested anymore in making them, because nobody was watching them, but they're still in public. That's the worst case scenario. I'd rather just have them in private, which is like, I usually write notes. I usually write private notes, personal notes. Instead, sometimes when in the times where I want people's feedback, random people, random strangers' input on my ideas, and if I feel like there's more talking than thought out, edited writing text, so sometimes I feel like it's more natural. It's better to see things more naturally. And in those cases, I sacrifice the luxury of privacy and make them public. But if nobody's watching them, then sacrificing the luxury doesn't give me enough return or reward. So in those cases, I'm probably not gonna make such long videos. Because I like to make long videos, I'm probably gonna be making less videos overall. I'm not gonna script my videos. I'm not gonna edit my videos. Yeah. So please let me know if you watch to the end of the videos. Some of you do, but if the ones who tell me in the comments that they watched to the end of the video, if those are the only people that watch to the end of the video, that's very disappointing. It's not just disappointing. I mean, it's still great that someone watches the whole thing. I forget that sometimes and get arrogant. But that's the problem, is that's not enough. that's not enough to keep making the videos. Um, because again, I'm sacrificing the privacy of my thoughts here. It's great to get people's feedback and opinions, and it's lovely to share them with other people and to see what, like, how it makes them feel, and to just have other people hear my thoughts. It's not an arrogance thing. It's just I like sharing information around. I like the flow of information happening. So it's great that people are being exposed to my ideas and thoughts in a very in a very harmless way. I love that. But again, it would be nice. Anyway, I just like talking to the camera a lot. So that's why I've stretched this out, this ending talk to 5 minutes, which is now what, a sixth of the video. Yeah. Anyway, so if you watched to the end, please comment below. And if you did, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I seriously do. It does mean a lot to me. Yeah. So, good night.